Okay, you're all set, Jeanette.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Sage 300 CRE Desktop and Common Tools session. My name is Jeanette, and I'll be your instructor for the next hour, talking mostly about the Sage Desktop and the changes. If you have not had a chance or you didn't see the link to the documentation for this session, if you take a look at the Go-To webinar panel, there is a link to a Word document. It's 43 pages. This is the document that we're going to be following today. So if you can, go ahead and get that printed out for yourself and for anybody else in your company that's joining the session. This will give you a place to follow along and also to take notes as we go through. All right, so what we're going to be talking about today, just a little overview here of our agenda. We're going to be looking at the Sage Desktop and how to make changes to the configuration. The Sage Desktop is new. It has a new version starting with 16.1 and going forward. So the things that we're going to talk about today, we're really going to focus on those, on three versions of the software: 16.1, 17.1, and the new 18.1. I'm also going to show you some workflow centers that are available in the desktop. So this will definitely help out for new users at your company that are going to be using Sage that haven't necessarily been trained yet. This will help them get their hands on and get started in the software. I also want to show you some setup wizards. We have a setup central that helps you with setting up brand new data folders. So if you ever are in the need of doing that, instead of going through the applications one by one manually, the setup central will help walk you through creating that folder. And additionally, in job cost, we have a job central that will help with setting up new jobs or editing existing jobs. And I'm going to show you some screens in that as well. And then if we have time, or with the time remaining, I want to show you some common tasks that have always been available within the software and where they're located now from the Sage Desktop. And then lastly, I will remind you of the reconciliation tool that's only available in the desktop. We'll just do a short little overview of what that feature is and how it can be helpful during month end. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the configuration, the desktop configuration. And the very first bullet here, everyone needs to be aware of with regards to TS main. So TS main is slowly being phased out of Sage 300 CRE. It's still available from the desktop in 16.1. It's actually the very last item listed under the application panel on the Sage Desktop. But in 17.1, it's been removed from the application dropdown, but you actually still have access to it. And I'll show you once we get into the software for those of you that are on 17.1 that are missing TS main. When you do go forward to 18.1, that little shortcut will be gone. So I'm going to show you some options within the software to take its place if you're still, if you're old school like I am, have been on the software for a long time, and you miss it. I'll show you how to kind of work around that. Now, when you do go into the Sage software, the default, there's a default homepage that will come up for the Sage Desktop. I'm going to show you today, I'm going to demonstrate to you how to take that default homepage, copy it to a new name, and then go in and make changes to it to kind of customize it per user, which is what I would recommend, that for each person using the software, someone there or they can themselves go in and make a copy of that default and then go in and customize either web pages that they want to come up automatically or crystal reports that they would like. to be brought in automatically, or even crystal home pages that they would like displayed when they go into the software. Excuse me. So that's the first thing we're actually going to take a look at. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the Sage desktop. Now, in your handout, this is on page 1. I do want to point out that the icon for the Sage desktop has changed. So if you look at the bottom of my screen, if you can see it, there is a green icon, and this is in the middle of your handout on page 1. Looks like a green and white. It's green and white, looks like a building. The icon used to be orange and green, so that's kind of a change. So if you are used to looking for the icon, the old, with the old, whatever you want to design, this is the new design. All right. So this is what you'll click on to bring up Sage, and it's going to bring up the default home web page, which is Sage City. So my recommendation here is that once this comes up, is that you go ahead and come up here to Options, and you click on Save Configuration As, and then on this window, you go ahead and give it a name, maybe the user's name, and then you click Save. So that saves you. You always have a copy of the default page from Sage, and then you have a customized desktop name for the individual user. And then you'll go ahead and click Save. And then once that is saved, you're going to come in with Options, and you're going to go to Desktop Settings, which is the screenshot on page 2. For the default desktop configuration, you're going to click the Browse button, and you're going to select the desktop configuration that you just created. So you'll highlight that, and then you'll click Open. And that brings up all of the settings on the screen will be from the default, and this is where you're going to do your customization. So in the default web page area here, you can pick any web page. You can give it a starting web page. Now, you might want to just go ahead and leave it at Sage City, which is the default web page. But if you have a company website, you can go ahead and put that in here in the web address. And when you launch Sage, it'll bring up your website as the home page. And then down below, if you would like to pull in an additional crystal report when you launch Sage, you can go ahead and click the Select button. And here, where you want to go, let me get back to, get back here. I'm going to show you where this is. This is actually, the path name is in your handout. Excuse me, on page 3 at the very top. You want to go to where you have Sage installed, to the Program Data folder, and then scroll down to Sage. Go to Timberline Office, then go to 9.5, then go to Documents, and you'll see there's just one subfolder underneath Documents called Desktop, and then under that you'll see the subfolder for Home Pages. So if you double-click there, it shows you 4 subfolders for 4 different types of business types that Sage has grouped their crystal reports into. So I'm going to select the commercial construction, and here is the list of the home pages that Sage has created for the desktop. I'm going to go ahead and select the financial report here, the controller, and I'm going to go ahead and say Open on that. And it's going through a little validation, and then it brings back and pulls that report design into the default crystal report page. Now, this report doesn't automatically open when we go ahead and click the Save button. It has stored it in the configuration file. To bring that report up, you need to click on the drop-down area next to the New Tab button, this plus sign. If you click on that drop-down arrow, you will see the option here to add default crystal report, which is what we just added to our configuration. So here I will click on that button, that option, and it will bring the crystal report in. Now, when the window first comes up, there won't be any data displayed on the screen. So this is where a lot of people kind of get confused. They think, oh my gosh, the report is not working. You have to click the Generate button here in this middle panel in order for the system to go out and bring in and configure the data for the report. So this should look familiar here. It's pulling in the information for the crystal report. And depending on the size of your data, it will take a few minutes, but then it brings the report in. Okay. Now, a couple of things here to make this look a little bit cleaner. You'll notice on the side there is an option here for parameters with an arrow. This arrow collapses that little panel and brings the report over more center into the screen or into the window. And then what I always would like to do is drag this little area here over to the left so it centers the report more on the screen for me. Okay. So now I've got not only my website here on this tab, I've also got a crystal report on this tab. During the day, if I'd like to update this report, all I need to do is click the parameters option here to expand this window, click the Generate button again, and it will refresh the data. And then just collapse it again. Additionally, if I want to add more, if I have multiple reports that I would like to see on my home page, I can add a selected crystal report. And it will actually bring me back into the home pages area, and I can select maybe the accounts payable overview. And I can go ahead and open it. And it's actually starting a new tab for us here. And again, no data is brought in until I click the Generate button at the top. And again, it goes through and it's bringing that information into the crystal report. And as soon as that's done and I see the report on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and collapse this middle panel. And I'm going to drag this over so it's more centered on the screen for me. And then during the day, if I need to refresh again, I just click the parameters button to expand that window. I click Generate again, and then I can collapse it once it's done. Now I've got two reports or two home crystal reports up here that I can toggle between. I can even add more if I need to. I could put a job cost one in there if I wanted. One thing, I don't know if any of you have used these home pages before, but these are sub-reports up here at the top, the blue report names. So from any of these, you can click on the report and it will pop in a sub-crystal report. You can hold these open as well. You can come back to the main report and open up a second report if you needed to. So again, you can toggle between these reports on your desktop. If you need to close these windows, let me get this out of the way. Hold on a second. I've got my little panel in the way here. Collapse that. Right here in the corner, there is a little X. And so when you're on any of the tabs that are open down here at the bottom, you can click this little X and it will close the report. Oh, come on. Close your report. There we go. And then we can close this one. There we go. And we're back to the main report here. Okay, so the nice thing about this is if you get the home pages up and customize it the way you'd like it to open. If you come back up here under options, you can click on Save Configuration, and it will save the tabs that you have open at the time that you click Save Configuration. So if I go ahead and save this, if I were to close out of Sage and reopen it, it will actually open all three of these tabs for me. So I don't have to click on the drop-down area to re-add those reports every time I go in and out of Sage. Okay. And this is at the top of page 4. It talks about using the generate button to refresh these screens, and then talks about that you can have as many reports or websites open as you want, and if you want them to be redisplayed every time you open the desktop, just click Save. And again, each workstation can be configured. So I'm sure you've got employees at your company that do different types of things, during the day or as their job dictates. So you would want to customize each workstation based on what that person's role is. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to point out here too is what we're seeing over here on the left-hand side. Notice that Applications has a green bar underneath of it. When you first open up Sage, the only thing that you're going to see is the Sage City, this window right here, and it actually covers the whole screen. To get the applications to display, you just click on Applications, and it shows you the list of applications that you have installed on your system. Now, what I don't have in your document is how you can also use the Favorites option. So if we take a look at this feature right here, this has got some web resources here listed. You can customize this area and only pull in the tasks or the setup options that an individual user might be doing. So how you control that is you come in here under Options, and you come down to Manage Favorites. And all you need to do here is over here under the Favorites area, it's very simple. You right-click your mouse and click on Add New Group. And this new group could be the application that this person is in charge of. So I'm going to actually call this, let me go back and say this is AP Workflow. And then it adds this as a new group under the Favorites area. Then I'm going to click on the application that I want to add from, and it opens up all the options I have available within that application. And then I can click on Tasks, and maybe this person, what they do is they enter invoices. So all you do is click on the task or the setup option, and you drag it over, and you hover over the grouping that this task belongs in. And you'll see here that it adds it right there. And then you save it, and this shows up in the panel then on the left. And I'm going to collapse the web stuff here. And then all you have to do is just click on that option, and it brings it up. So again, you can customize under the Favorites area what this particular employee or user is responsible for. You can add everything that you see under the AP application. You can add any of those options to this Favorites area. And then again, when you click the Save button under Options, Save Configuration, it saves this favorite list. And then when you go in and out of Sage, this is the panel that comes up on the left. Okay. Either that or you're highlighted under Applications, and that's what comes up on the left. So you've got a few options here on the desktop itself on the home page that you can work with. You can work with the configuration and options and pulling in either websites or home pages. You can have the applications listed on the left-hand side, or you can modify under the favorites area. You can pick and choose the things that you want to see under that favorites panel. Okay. Now, one of the other nice things about the desktop here is workflow centers. So there's a screenshot on page 4 in your handout. This workflow center is located under additional tools. There is a workflow center's introduction, and from this page right here, you can actually click on a workflow center, and it will bring up a window that will that looks. If we were to click on AP, it looks like the one on the top of page 5. Which I'm going to go back here and actually click on that. Okay. These are interactive screens that will actually pull in common workflow tasks or setup tasks that a user might be responsible for. So in accounts payable, what this workflow screen does, it allows them, instead of having to go into the full AP application, or if you haven't customized their favorite panel, they can, from here, they can go in, they can enter invoices, and it pulls up the enter invoice screen. They can enter their invoices in, finish, and then it brings them back here. They can keep doing that. They can run select invoices to pay, print checks, record manual checks, any of the common tasks that an AP clerk might do. There's also a list of common reports here on the side. And then if they need help with any of these tasks on this workflow center, these actually bring you into the help screens for that module, for that particular task. They've added additional tasks that they might be in charge of, like changing invoices or voiding checks, setting up vendors under the setup area. So let me close this one. We can also, there's other areas. We can click on the payroll. It brings up the payroll workflow. So they have two ways then to get to these workflow centers. They can do it from the welcome screen that kind of gives them an overview and shows them links to the different workflows, or from the additional tools window, they're broken out here as well. So if you wanted to, you could set the workflows up as a favorite and drag these workflows, the ones that they're responsible for, into that favorite and have those show separately. Come on. Okay. So here, this is the payroll one, an example. Entering checks or entering time, processing, printing, posting. And then changing, voiding, setting up the main areas for payroll: employees, pays, deductions, fringes, common reports listed on the side, and then help screens, help topics here listed under assistance. Okay. So a nice, easy way to get a brand new user comfortable within the software without having to show them the full application and all the pieces. This is a nice way to get new employees comfortable in the software. Now, additionally, to make it easy for some of the setup, we have something called Setup Central. So the entry screen for this is at the bottom of page 5. This is listed under Common Tasks, under Tools. It's down at the bottom. It's called Setup Central. Now, the key to this one is you have to have set up a folder before you start. So it won't let you go through Setup Central in an existing data folder that has data files already created. So we're not going to actually go all the way through this. I've got some screenshots in your handout on page 5 and 6 that kind of walk you through what some of the screenshots may look like. It's going to take you through setting up the General Ledger Master, as well as some of the other modules. So again, it just depends on what your need is as far as creating a new data folder to run Sage in. Now the other setup wizard, these are called setup wizards because they walk you through. The other setup wizard that you may be more interested in is for job cost. Let me go ahead and close some of these windows here. Under job cost, and this is on page 7 in your handout, we have an option here called Job Central. And what this will help with is setting up or editing existing jobs in your job cost master file. So the window that comes up, it gives you a list of current jobs that you have set up. So you can select any of these and go in and make changes. Or if you're setting up a brand new job, and we'll go through a couple screens here so I can point out a couple of things here. Okay. The first thing that, and I need you to write this in your book or your handout on page 7, you need to use the tab key to move from field to field. Enter will not move. So you need to use tab, and that will accept the value and take you down to the next field. Okay. So if I hit enter here, let's say in description, it's not going to go anywhere. I have to hit the tab key to get down to the address fields. So on this first window, you're just setting up static information about this new job. If you click on accounting defaults, here's where you will, if you're using prefixes in General Ledger, you'll select the prefix. If you've got cost account groups set up for different GL account numbers, base accounts, based on the type of job, this is where you'll select the A, B, or C. If you're using payroll and you need to use a workers' comp table, or you need to assign the state that the job is in, or the local, or whether it's certified or not, you'll go ahead and put values in these fields. For the billing information, you can select your customer. If you're using taxes, select your tax group. If this is a quick bill, select quick bill, or if it's progress bill, select the progress billing, and then go ahead and enter your some static information. Then again, retainage percent, what invoice design to use, and then what the contract ID is going to be. This is going to set this up for you over in the contracts module. Then you can go ahead to the schedule of values, and you are able to enter the contract items, a description, and then the contract amount. Now, the nice thing about this is that you can actually pull this information from an Excel spreadsheet. You can cut and paste into this grid. And it's the same down here with your cost estimates. You can cut and paste into a grid. Now, in order to get the cost estimate to work, you need to come over here to the job structure, back up here one, and you need to pull in the cost codes that are in the estimate. So you can select them one at a time. You can actually drag. I'm holding my shift key down. I can drag and then use the arrow to move it over. And then once that's done, if I come over here to cost estimate, then I can use a spreadsheet and I can pull in the values. I can cut and paste. So this is a quick and easy way, again, for new users of the software to get a job set up, or for those of you that have been on the system for a while, this could be a quick and easy way to get your estimate in without using enter estimate or having to manually import the estimate in. Either way. Okay. All right. We need to, let me actually come back here to the, I want to talk here, we're going to get into some common tasks and actually accessing the applications. Let me come back here to the desktop. Now, we talked about workflow stuff, some Job Central stuff. We talked about customizing this favorites area. What we haven't talked about is accessing the applications themselves. There's a couple of ways you can do it beyond the workflows and the favorites dropdown. When you click on an application, you're going to get a panel here to the right of the applications list where you have some choices. You can either click on the tasks or the setup or the inquiry or the reports, and it will give you a list of what is in that dropdown. And you can click on any of these, and it brings up that particular task. That's one way. So you can run everything straight from the desktop. Your other option is to do this sort of the old-fashioned way, like with TS Main. At the very top of each panel on each application, there is an option to bring up the full application. And this is the same window that you would see if you were to run AP from TS Main. And it actually brings up, and at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the icon for that application. If I go back to the desktop, I can also open up as many of these as I want. I can open up job cost, and it'll pull job cost up, the full application, and I can minimize that, or I can go back to the Sage desktop, or I can go back to AP, so I can toggle between those applications. Now, again, in 16.1, there is a TS Main option at the very bottom on the Sage desktop, down here at the bottom. But you notice I'm on 17, and it's not there. They've removed TS Main from the desktop in 17.1. However, there is a shortcut to it that still exists for this version. If you go out to the program files folder, the x86, and you go under Timberline Office, and you go to the shared folder, if you go down to the T's here, this used to be, the executable for this used to be ts.exe. It is now tn.exe. So you can create a shortcut on your Windows desktop to launch this executable, and it will bring up TS Main that you see in the middle of page 8. So you can still run that executable in version 17.1, but keep in mind this goes away in 18.1. So I would recommend that you get used to running the Sage desktop, and that you open up, if you still want to run this the old way, you open up each of these applications, the full module, and then you can run that application exactly the way you used to run it. Okay, all the tasks, the setup, the tools, everything that you are used to seeing in TS Main is still there under each application. So what I want to show you here, we're just going to highlight a few of these. I want to show you that all of the common tasks or tools are still there, and you can run these either way. You can either open up a full application or TS Main, or you can run this from inside the Sage desktop. So the first one we're going to look at is on page 9. So if you want to create a brand new company, under Options, you have a new company option right here. And this brings up the same window that you see if you were to go into an application or TS main and run File, New Company, which is it's on page 9, and then the screenshot for this is on page 10. So this works exactly the same. You enter the new company name or the new data folder name, and then when you hit enter, it will fill in the path name. And then if you're going to base this folder on the folder that you're in, this use current setup that's grayed out, leave that check mark there. And then you just click OK, and it will create the folder. It'll create the ts.ctl, which is the Sage control file for that folder. This is the file that tells Sage that this file belongs, or this folder belongs to the Sage software. Okay. And then once you do that, when you go to Options, Open Company, which is the same as File Open Company on page 11, that new data folder will be listed here in your list of companies. Okay. Now, the company settings area, this is on page 12. What you're used to seeing under File, Company Settings, is now under Common Tasks. So back here on the Sage desktop, under File, you have Company Settings, and this is where all of those options are located. So if I click on Company Settings, here's where I see General and File Locations and Custom Descriptions and Custom Fields. Okay, and they work exactly the same. So under General, this is where I would, if I need to change my company name or address, or website, or put in an email address, or give it a data folder description, I can change that information here. The accounting method was selected when you created the folder, but you can change it here. Just be aware that it changes information, so you need to be very careful with this. Batch names are set to automatic, so every time you do a journal entry, it automatically assigns, but you can change that to manual if you want to. Okay. So same options that you have the old way. Okay. Now also here, this is the file locations. This is the same options that you had under TS main or inside a data folder. You can turn on named files. If you're sharing data between folders, this is where you come in and give it the path name of where this particular data folder needs to look for any of these file types that are listed here. So the file types are in alphabetical order by application. So you just simply scroll down and find the file that you need to share or that you need to look for in another folder and put the path name here in the large area. Okay, custom descriptions. For those of you that aren't aware of this, you can actually come in and change some of the names of these fields that display within the software. So a good example of this is in job cost. Again, these are in alphabetical order. So if I scroll down to the job cost fields and I look at the field for cost code, Sage calls it cost code, but if your company calls it phase or some other term, you can actually change that, and it changes it within the software. Same with the extra field. Sage calls it extra, but that may not be what your company refers to it as. So you can change the description. You can also change on some of these that are not grayed out the width of the field. You can change there. Additionally, any of the fields that have a drop down, the field is hard coded in the software and it has a drop down value, you can check here under custom descriptions and you can actually go in and you can customize the list. Just click into the field, click on the customize list button, and you're able to add or delete items that are there. You can even move stuff, use the move button arrows and move stuff up and down so it displays how you want. And you can even change the default that displays when you're setting stuff up. This is also where the GL account, JC job, JC cost code, the structure of those fields are set. So when your company was initially set up in Sage, someone came in actually here under custom descriptions and set those structures up for you. Okay, the last thing here under company settings is custom fields. So this is where someone is going to come in and add additional fields to some of the master files. So if you've got extra information that you want to store about a particular master file record for reporting purposes, you would actually do this within the application itself, because if you do it from here at the Sage desktop, you're going to see all of the fields. But if I come in here under job cost and come to File, Company Settings, Custom Fields, I only see the job cost records. So I can come in and highlight the record, click the edit button, and I can add additional fields to that record. This is usually used for reporting purposes. So there's something else that you need to store about that record for your reports that doesn't exist with the default fields that come with the software. Now there's some extra common tasks here. There's some send settings, send and send settings. These are your email options. I've never heard of anyone actually using common tasks or file send to send an email out of Sage. Usually you're doing it from a report design or a form that you're emailing. The send settings, I would recommend that you do come in here if you are going to email from inside Sage, that you get a default sender name in here. You may have to go into Address Book and set yourself up as a person in Address Book so that when you use the binoculars here, you can find yourself on the list and then pull yourself in as the default sender. Because most people, when they receive an email, if they don't know who it's from, they'll probably delete it. Additionally, there's some faxing options, and you can lock in a cover page design for either for printing or there's also a cover page design for the fax. The other ones I want to point out, the printouts. We're going to talk about printouts when we get into the tools area. I'm sure you're all familiar with the printouts. You can run them from the Sage desktop or within each application. Okay, and then again, locking in your default printer. That's under printer setup. Okay, so I've got screenshots in your handout of all of those areas. Now, under tools, the upgrade files, this is only going to be available from the Sage desktop or TS main. So if you're not using TS main, or it's already gone from your system, when you get a new version of Sage, they'll give you a list of files that need to be upgraded. You'll need to do this from the Sage desktop. So under Common Tasks, under Tools, you'll run Upgrade Files. And here, you'll select either all, or you'll select the files that Sage is telling you that you need to upgrade. And then you just click the Start button, and it will go out and upgrade the data files to the version of the software that you're on. Now, for those of you that are not up to 17.1 yet, there's a page in your book on page 24 that talks about change registration. This is for changing your registration name and for adding uses of the modules to your system. If you are on 17.1 or above, activation codes are no longer used with those versions of the software. There is something called entitlement now, that when you install that version of the software, it actually looks out on a entitlement server of Sages, and it pulls in and sets up the number of uses for you automatically. So again, page 24 in your book is only valid for those of you that are on 16.1 or lower. Additionally, on page 25, notice that macros are not listed here under Tools. Macros, they're still there, but you have to run them from inside the application. So under the application, you would go to Tools, Macros, listed here, and you would add your tasks to the macro. The reason that it's not on the desktop is because the macro has to pull in specific application tasks, and those tasks are not on the Sage desktop. So you have to, again, you have to set your macros up inside an application, and then once it's there, you have to run the macro from inside an application. Because here on the Sage desktop, under Tools, macros are not listed. And I've got instructions for you on the macro setup on page 25, how to add the steps, and then how to run. Also on page 26, I've got the background task, a screenshot of it, and also a calculator on page 26. On page 27 in your handout, I talk about file tools. So you can run file tools from the Sage desktop, or you can run it from inside an individual application or from TS main. So one thing about file tools, you need to make sure that anybody that's making backups or copies of data for Sage is using this option, because it picks up all the pieces of the pervasive database. If your user goes out to Windows Explorer and tries to copy the file from the main data folder and only picks up that one piece, they haven't backed up any data. So using this option here, and then they can use the Add Files option, they can pick and choose which file they want to back up, and it'll open it up, and then when they hit the next button, they can tell it where to save the file, the backup file, and what to call it. Okay. And I've got screen-by-screen shots of that workflow in your handout all the way through page 31. It walks you through selecting the file. It's an example of doing an actual backup. File Doctor is listed here under Common Tasks. If you run into an issue or an error on a file, we may ask you to run File Doctor. All you do is select the file that has the problem and click Start. Now, running it this way will do a check on the file, and it will tell you what's wrong with the file. And it may recommend that you run it again with the Fix and Compact Bad files checked. You need to make a backup of the file first before you do that, just in case. The other thing we recommend is that you fix and compact the file directly at the server, because it could be that the network is what's causing the corruption or the error, and by running it, the fix and compact over the network may compound the problem. So we recommend first run it without checking any boxes to get what the problem is, make a backup of the file, and then rerun the File Doctor, checking the box to fix and compact, but run it at the server. And then check your printout to see if it's resolved the issue, and then go back and run the task or the report or whatever it is that you're trying to run to see if that corrected the problem. Now there is on page 33 under Common Tasks or within an application or TS main, there's a system verification. This runs, you can run this at your workstation or at the server, and it will go through and just double check based on the system requirements for Sage to see if your system is okay to run the Sage software. It actually runs this when you do an install, but you can run it if you're having issues with a workstation or with the server. You can actually run it after the install to see if everything is still okay. All right, under Customize and Options, there's a couple things I want to point out to you here because there are some new features here within those two areas. Under Customize, the General tab still looks the same. You can have fixed decimal, print to file turned on here. You can also check this box if you have multiple folders, but a person only comes in and uses one data folder. Check this box so they don't have to keep selecting the folder when they start Sage. Excuse me. Status bar is still the same. This controls some of the things at the bottom of your screen. Remote print could be new for some people. There's instructions in the help screens on how to set up a remote printer. What this means is that instead of doing the processing for the report at the workstation to send it to the workstation printer, you can actually send it over to the server and have the server process it and print to a printer connected directly to the server. So it's a way to speed up the processing to get your reports out a little bit faster. There's also a new tab here for appearance. If you're having trouble with maybe some of the grids, some of the screens that come up on your workstation, you might want to double check and change your theme here. This Office 2000, this is my operating system I'm on right now, 2007, blue. It's just pretty plain, and so it's not interfering with any of my screen displays. There's also a place for a custom background, but you might want to, if you're having trouble with the grids that come up on some of the tasks, you might want to switch back to one of the Microsoft themes to see if that solves the problem. There's also the show logo. This is the Sage logo that comes up down here in the bottom corner, the Sage 300 Construction and Real Estate. You can turn that off if you want. By default, it's turned on. Okay. Okay, and the other thing under options that I want to show you, okay, this has stayed the same. Audit setup activity, I've got that turned on. That should be turned off. Reports, margins, cover pages, headings, that's all stayed the same. Location has stayed the same. You can customize your options to be just the data folder or everybody. So if whatever you change on these tabs, you want everybody to have those same features, you would change the bullet. Letterhead has stayed the same. Mail settings could be new. If you're not using Outlook, you can put in some simple, I think this is simple mail settings, so you can put some, you might have to work with IT to get some of this information set up here. So it would use this instead of using Outlook, which is what Sage defaults to. And then the last tab, the Journals tab here, this is new. I think it was new in, I'm not sure, 15 or 16, but some people might not be aware of this. You can set the system to automatically send your journals from your data entry into a print file. And you can designate where that print file is going to reside. Now, I've set this up to where all my print files are going into a folder by application and task name, meaning AP enter invoices or AP print checks. And then the name of the journal, I've set it to be my username and then month, day, year, and time, so that I can easily find this file when I go to printouts. So if I come in here, let me go to AP as an example, and go to printouts. It's created folders for me as I've been working in the software. So I've got a folder for each application, and then within those folders, I have subfolders for the tasks, and then it's creating files for me as I do my work. And so and it doesn't prompt me. So this stops the system from prompting you for a print file when you're doing normal workflow entry. Okay. And then if I need to see what that journal looks like, I can just open it up, and there it is. Okay. So if you don't have that turned on, I would recommend that you go ahead and do that. This is on page, the screenshot for that is on page 40 in your handout. All right, help screens have changed a little bit. Or for help topics. Now you still have, back here, you still can go to help and help topics, and it brings up the same screens and the same tabs. But the documents portion of this, you can actually go here to product documents, and it looks a little bit different. So you can use the drop down here, and you can get to release notes. If you click the drop down here, it'll show you in the installation checklist, release notes, user's guide. All of this is now listed here. So instead of a list of PDF files, you now have kind of links here, and these links are actually going to take you to the Sage website. And there's even videos here. So if you wanted to, I think there's the central, this has to do with the new features actually in 18.1. Yeah, so just be aware again that this has a different look and feel than it had before. Now, if we go back to, oops, let me go back here, and if I take a look at help here, this has got again another kind of a different look and feel to it as well. So just be aware of that. You can get to the help stuff either through the application or through TS Main, excuse me, or from the Sage desktop. And I've got a screenshot of how to get to your release notes, again, on page 42. The last page in your handout just talks about finding the version. Sometimes you will be asked for what version of the software are you on. And if you just go to Help About, you can do it from the desktop, or you can do it from inside an application. And what you're looking for here is the version. And that will be what a consultant might be asking you for, or Sage support might be asking you for that as well. Okay. All right, the last thing I wanted to remind you about is under additional tools, and this is only from the Sage desktop. There is a reconciliation tool there that you can take a look at and either do a application by application reconciliation, or you can use a dashboard that will display some of the modules. It doesn't display them all. It only displays general ledger, AP, and cash management totals. But from there, you also have access to each individual application that you need to reconcile. So this would be, instead of doing it kind of the old-fashioned way of running aging reports and then financial statements to compare, you can actually run this reconciliation tool, and it will do the comparison for you automatically, and then step by step it walks you through what to do if you're out of balance and you're trying to find that out of balance amount. Okay, so just a reminder that tool is there on the Sage desktop only. All right, some tips and reminders before we close the session. First, again, TS Main goes away with 17.1, meaning you can't find it or you don't see it on the desktop, but you still have access to it with a shortcut until you get to 18.1, and then it's totally gone. As a tip, start using the Sage desktop, launch the application from there so that you see all the options just like you do if you're running TS Main. Desktops can be custom for each user. So on a user-by-user basis, based on what their role is within the company, you can go in and customize those desktop configurations so that they see the reports that they need, the websites that they need, just the tasks that they need to run, so they don't have to see everything. They only need to see the individual tasks or setup options that they need. So that can be done using the favorites area or workflow centers. So for brand new users to your company that need to start, getting into Sage right away to help out with data entry, let them use a workflow center so that you don't have to try to train them on all the ins and outs of the software right away. And then lastly, if you're doing macros and you've upgraded to one of the newer versions, the macros are not on the desktop. They're inside the application themselves under Tools. Okay, so we're almost right on time. So Tina, if there's any questions from anybody within the chat, I can help with that now. Or if you guys want to email your questions into Tina, she can forward those to me, and I'll be happy to help you with any questions that you have on the desktop itself.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like we have any questions right now in chat, but of course, if anybody wants to email me, as you said, my email is tina.derby, D-E-R-B-Y, at onpoint-software.com, and feel free to email us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with an answer to any of your questions. So I think we're good.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And again, just get in there and practice with the desktop. It's pretty easy, and with the new look and feel of it, it's very easy to customize. And again, because the TS Main is going away, start using the desktop, start launching those applications right from there so that you're comfortable with running the software that way ahead of time before you get to 18.1. Okay? All right. Well, thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day, and hopefully I'll see you at the next session. Okay. Bye.